Asterisk, have you ever wondered how a single unexpected moment can change your entire life? If you enjoy stories about fate, second chances, and finding love in the most unlikely places, stay with me until the end. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories that remind us how beautiful life can be when we least expect it. Asterisk. The first thing Marcus Reynolds noticed when he opened his office door at 5:30 a.m. wasn't the stack of contracts waiting for his signature. It wasn't the gentle glow of dawn breaking through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 47th floor. It was the young woman curled up on his leather couch, fast asleep, still wearing the black and white uniform of the building's cafe. He stood frozen in the doorway, briefcase in hand, trying to make sense of the scene. Security in the Reynolds Tower was impeccable. No one without proper clearance could access the executive floor, especially after hours. Yet here she was, her chestnut hair falling across her face, her breathing deep and even, completely unaware that she was sleeping in the office of one of New York's most powerful CEOs. Marcus should have been angry. He should have called security immediately. Instead, he found himself setting his briefcase down quietly, careful not to wake her. There was something about her face, exhausted yet peaceful, that stopped him. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and even in sleep, the lines of worry were etched around her mouth. He recognized her vaguely from the cafe downstairs, always smiling, always efficient, despite the demanding executives who rarely looked up from their phones long enough to thank her. As he watched her sleep, a strange feeling washed over him. Not intrusion or violation of his private space, but a profound sense that he was witnessing something important, something real in a world where everything felt manufactured and transactional. When was the last time he'd seen someone so vulnerable, so unguarded? In his world of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, authenticity was as rare as failure. He didn't know it yet, but this moment, this simple, unexpected collision of two vastly different worlds, would change everything. Her name was Eliza Chen, and she had never meant to fall asleep in Marcus Reynolds' office. In fact, she had never meant to be in his office at all. Eliza worked double shifts at the cafe in Reynolds Tower, from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., and then from 4 p.m. to midnight at another restaurant across town. Last night, after closing the cafe, she had been so exhausted she could barely keep her eyes open. She had sat down for just a moment on a couch in what she thought was an empty conference room, intending only to rest her feet before making the long subway journey home to her tiny apartment in Queens. She had no idea she had wandered into the CEO's private office, or that the security guard who should have stopped her had stepped away from his post for just 5 critical minutes. She certainly had no idea that falling asleep in that particular room, on that particular night, would set in motion events that would transform her life. When Eliza finally stirred and opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was a man sitting quietly at the massive desk across the room, reviewing documents as if finding a sleeping waitress in his office was an everyday occurrence. Oh my God! She bolted upright, horror washing over her face as recognition dawned. Everyone who worked in the building knew Marcus Reynolds by sight, the 38-year-old genius who had built Reynolds Enterprises from a tech startup to a global empire in just a decade. Mr. Reynolds. I'm so sorry, I thought this was, I didn't mean to. It's all right, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. You looked like you needed the rest. Eliza stood up so quickly she nearly lost her balance. I'll be fired. I'll leave right now. Please, I can't lose this job. No one's firing you, Marcus said, standing up from his desk. But I am curious how you ended up here. Eliza's hands trembled as she smoothed down her wrinkled uniform. I was closing the cafe last night. I was so tired. I just needed to sit down for a minute before heading home. I thought this was one of the conference rooms. The door was unlocked, and I just... Her voice trailed off, the enormity of her mistake sinking in. You work 2 jobs, he asked, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. She nodded, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. 3, actually. I'm taking online classes during the day. Something in her determination struck him. Here was someone working herself to exhaustion, not for wealth or status, but simply to build a better life. When was the last time he'd had to fight for anything? "Have breakfast with me," he said suddenly, surprising himself as much as her. "What? Breakfast? The cafe opens in 20 minutes. I'd like to hear more about these online classes." Eliza stared at him, certain this was some kind of test or cruel joke. "Mr. Reynolds, I appreciate your understanding, but I should go. My shift starts soon anyway." "Consider yourself on special assignment this morning," he said with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. "I'm still your boss, technically. Think of it as a meeting." That first breakfast changed everything, though neither of them realized it at the time. Sitting in a quiet corner of the cafe, Marcus learned that Eliza was studying business administration, that she sent half her earnings to her widowed mother in California, that she hadn't taken a day off in 8 months. She spoke with such passion about her dreams of starting a small business someday that he found himself hanging on every word. For Eliza, the breakfast was equally revealing. The intimidating CEO from the business magazines was actually thoughtful and attentive. He asked questions about her life and actually listened to her answers. When she mentioned the crushing weight of her student loans, he didn't offer empty platitudes about hard work paying off eventually. Instead, he asked insightful questions about her degree program and offered practical advice about scholarship opportunities she hadn't considered. As they parted ways that morning, both felt a strange reluctance to end the conversation. Marcus found himself inventing a reason to return to the cafe later that day, and the day after that. Eliza found herself looking forward to his visits, even as she told herself not to read anything into them. He was just being kind. Men like Marcus Reynolds didn't fall for women who served coffee for a living. But something had shifted in Marcus's carefully ordered world. For the first time in years, he found himself distracted during meetings, his thoughts drifting to Eliza's laugh, to the determined set of her jaw when she spoke about her future, to the way she treated everyone, from the building's janitors to its executives, with the same genuine respect. 2 weeks after finding her asleep in his office, Marcus made a decision. He waited until the cafe was closing, then approached her as she wiped down the counters. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said without preamble. Eliza looked up, startled. "Mr. Reynolds." "Marcus," he corrected. "And this isn't a business meeting or a special assignment. This is me asking you on a date." The cloth in her hand stilled. "Why?" The question caught him off guard. He had expected hesitation, perhaps even a polite refusal, but not this direct challenge to his motives. "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since I found you asleep in my office," he admitted. "Because talking with you is the best part of my day. Because you're the most genuine person I've met in years." Eliza studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity. "People will talk," she said finally. "They'll say things about me, about why you're interested in someone like me." "Let them talk," Marcus replied. "I don't care what anyone thinks except you." Their first date was nothing like Eliza had imagined. Instead of an expensive restaurant with intimidating silverware arrangements, Marcus took her to a small Vietnamese place in Queens, just blocks from her apartment. He'd done his research, discovering it was her favorite cuisine but a luxury she rarely afforded herself. Over steaming bowls of pho, they talked for hours. Marcus told her about growing up with the crushing expectations of his father, about the loneliness of success, about how empty his achievements sometimes felt. Eliza shared her struggles as the daughter of immigrants, the weight of being her family's best hope for financial stability, her fears of never breaking free from the cycle of exhausting work and minimal progress. By the end of the night, something profound had happened. Two people from vastly different worlds had seen each other, truly seen each other, perhaps for the first time in their lives. But their story was just beginning, and the path ahead was far from smooth. The whispers started almost immediately. Eliza felt the stares and heard the hushed comments when she arrived for her shifts at the cafe. Gold digger was the kindest of the accusations. Some suggested she had manipulated her way into Marcus's life, while others implied she was providing services beyond coffee. For Marcus, the opposition came from his board of directors and his inner circle. His COO, James Harrington, was the first to voice concerns. "A waitress, Marcus? Really? Do you know what this looks like to our investors? To the press?" "I don't care how it looks," Marcus replied, his voice hardening. "My personal life is not up for discussion." But James persisted. "She's after your money. Women like her always are. You've worked too hard to risk everything on some girl from the cafe." Marcus felt a surge of anger he rarely allowed himself to express. "That girl works harder than anyone in this building, including me. She's studying for a business degree while working 3 jobs and supporting her mother. What exactly about that suggests she's looking for an easy path?" The argument with James was just the beginning. Marcus's father, Richard Reynolds, the company's founder and chairman emeritus, was far less diplomatic when he learned about Eliza. "End it now," Richard demanded during a tense dinner at his Hamptons estate. "Before this infatuation damages everything we've built." "It's not an infatuation," Marcus replied calmly, though his knuckles were white around his fork. "And I'm not ending anything." Richard's face darkened. "Then at least be discreet. Keep her as your little diversion if you must, but don't parade her around like she's suitable company. There are appearances to maintain." Marcus set down his utensils and stood. "Thank you for dinner, Dad. I won't be staying for dessert. And for the record, Eliza is not a diversion. She's the woman I'm falling in love with." As he drove away from his father's house that night, Marcus called Eliza. Hearing her voice centered him, reminded him of what was real and what mattered. But he didn't tell her about the conversation with his father. He didn't want to burden her with the ugliness of his world. What Marcus didn't realize was that Eliza was fighting battles of her own. Her co-workers at the cafe had divided into 2 camps, those who resented her for her relationship with the boss, and those who expected special treatment because of it. Her manager had started scrutinizing her work with unprecedented attention, eager to find any mistake that might justify disciplinary action. Even worse were the anonymous messages that began appearing on her phone and social media. "Gold-digging whore" was among the milder insults. Some contained threats. Others included personal details that suggested the sender had been following her. Eliza told herself she could handle it. She had faced discrimination and hardship before. But the weight of it all, the hostility at work, the threatening messages, the exhaustion of maintaining her studies while navigating this new relationship, began to take its toll. 6 weeks into their relationship, the situation came to a head. Eliza was working her shift at the cafe when a group of executives from the company's legal department came in. As she served their order, she overheard one of them making crude comments about her relationship with Marcus. "Reynolds must be getting something special with his coffee," the man said, loud enough for Eliza and several customers to hear. "Wonder if she offers those services to anyone with the right price." Something in Eliza snapped. After weeks of enduring whispers and insults, after years of being treated as invisible by the very people she served, she'd had enough. "Sir," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "I'd be happy to speak with HR about your inappropriate comments. Or would you prefer I discuss them directly with Mr. Reynolds?" The executive's face flushed with anger. "Are you threatening me? Do you know who I am?" "Yes," Eliza replied. "You're someone who should know better." The confrontation escalated quickly. By the time the cafe manager intervened, the executive was demanding Eliza be fired immediately. 2 hours later, she was called into the manager's office and informed that her position was being terminated due to unprofessional conduct. Eliza didn't call Marcus. She didn't want him to think she expected him to intervene, to use his power to save her job. That would only confirm what everyone was saying about her. Instead, she walked out of Reynolds Tower with her head held high, fighting back tears until she was safely on the subway heading home. It was only when she arrived at her apartment and found an eviction notice on her door that the tears finally came. Her roommate had moved out unexpectedly the week before, leaving Eliza responsible for the full rent, an impossible sum without her cafe job. As she sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by textbooks and past due notices, Eliza made a difficult decision. She would have to drop out of her classes and find full-time work immediately. And she would have to end things with Marcus. Their worlds were too different, the obstacles too great. She was disrupting his life, and the cost to her own was becoming unbearable. That night, she composed a text message to Marcus, explaining her decision to end their relationship. Her finger hovered over the send button for a long time before she finally pressed it, then turned off her phone, unable to bear seeing his response. Marcus was in the middle of a board meeting when Eliza's message came through. He excused himself immediately, trying and failing to reach her by phone. When she didn't answer, he did something he had never done before. He left a critical meeting without explanation and drove straight to her apartment in Queens. When Eliza opened her door to find Marcus standing there, his tie loosened and concern etched across his face, she nearly broke down. "You can't be here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I got your message," he replied. "And I'm not accepting it." "It's not up to you," Eliza said, fighting to keep her composure. "This isn't working. It's too complicated." "Tell me what happened," Marcus insisted, stepping into her apartment despite her protests. "The real reason you're ending this. The dam broke." Eliza told him everything, the firing, the eviction notice, the harassment, the threatening messages she'd been hiding from him. As she spoke, she watched Marcus's expression shift from concern to shock to a cold anger she had never seen before. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked when she finished. "Because I didn't want to be the woman who runs to her powerful boyfriend every time something goes wrong," Eliza replied. "Because I've spent my whole life fighting my own battles. And because deep down, I was afraid everyone was right, that I don't belong in your world." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he took her hands in his. "You're right about one thing," he said finally. "You don't belong in my world." Eliza felt her heart sink, even though this was exactly what she had been trying to tell him. "But maybe," Marcus continued, "I belong in yours." Before Eliza could process what he meant, Marcus was outlining a plan. He would address the harassment at his company immediately. He would help her find a new job, not at Reynolds Enterprises, but somewhere her qualifications would be valued. He would make sure she could continue her education. "I don't want your charity," Eliza protested. "This isn't charity," Marcus replied. "This is me fighting for us. You've been doing it alone all this time. Let me help."